Okay, on to the next item on our agenda. We have Todd Brown with us. Todd, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks everyone for having me here. And thanks, Frody, in particular. When Frody told me that I would be following David Allen, I thought, well, that's tough placement. That's a very hard place to be. Just a little bit of background on me. I'm a director of a company in the UK called Next Action Associates, and my partner Ed Lamont and I are UK partners at the David Allen Company, and do a lot of training and coaching, both in the UK and also more generally in Europe. And I'll talk after. I'm going to talk for probably about 15 minutes or so, and at the end, I've got some news about an event that's coming up in Oslo, which would be very happy to have as many of you as can attend, and those that you can get excited about the event as well. I'll come to that a little bit later on. My topic today is, before I set up the company with Ed, I was at Morgan Stanley, at the large American investment bank Morgan Stanley. I was an executive director of Morgan Stanley University, so I was one of the folks who was responsible for a whole range of things. Most recently, I had two roles. One, I was the global head of learning and development for the IT division at Morgan. And then I was also the head of new employee development. So all of the employees who joined Morgan Stanley went through programs that were designed and run by the people who worked for me. I have been a GTD enthusiast and and a great fan of the work of David and the folks at the David Allen Company for about 5 years now. And so when Frody told me a little bit about the event today and asked me to get involved, I was very excited to do it. What I'd like to do today is talk to you a little bit about, I suppose it's organizational perspectives. As we think about GTD beyond the individual, GTD in organizations, whether it's small companies or big companies, what does that look like, and what kinds of things do we need to keep in mind? So I've done this against the backdrop of my 4 years at Morgan Stanley, most recently at Morgan Stanley. But I think I've learned some lessons, and just again, as I was going through the process of, for example, setting up GTD as the standard for personal organization at Morgan Stanley, we made it the standard for new employee development. At the same time, what was going on was I was going through my own journey in GTD, so working on my own systems, getting my own, going through the processes that Frody's been talking about in his presentation earlier. So these slides are in no particular order, but these are just things that I think that I've learned about getting things done. So first is, it's not about technology. I mean, as you talk to people, you'll find that a lot of people have implemented GTD in a huge variety of ways. Some people have completely paper-based implementations of GTD. Some people are big fans of the IBM Lotus suite and use that as the core. Some people are married to their iPhones and have implemented GTD using that technology. Some people are in Outlook. So there's a huge variety about GTD. It's about the processes and the good practice, really. It's not about any particular technology skill set. And that's a really good thing. I had a client say to me the other day, he said, I'm so glad that GTD doesn't force you to use any particular technology, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be boxed in. He said, I'm happy to put myself in a box that I designed myself, but I don't want to be boxed in. I don't want someone else telling me how to run it. That said, when it comes to implementing it in large corporates, it is about technology. And what I mean by that is, it's very difficult in a corporate setting to teach GTD without getting into the detail about given the tool sets that we have at this company, how do we implement GTD? So at Morgan Stanley, what that meant was we ended up teaching GTD good practice, teaching about the principles, but also doing demonstrations of, okay, Outlook is our tool of choice, and here's how you can use Outlook in order to implement GTD. It's about grassroots support. I think this Tweetup is a great example of this, right? People get enthused about GTD, and it's funny. We in the UK we'll get about an email a week, from the folks at the David Allen Company or folks who come to us directly saying, really enthused about getting things done. I've got a plan for world domination and I'd love to talk to you about it. I mean, people just get really enthused about this stuff. So there's a lot of grassroots support out there. In implementing it what I found is that you can tap those grassroots organizations. You can absolutely, for example, we had an internal mailing list. It was simply called GTD, and anybody could sign up to it. And it was the kind of place where you'd get probably an email a week or an email every couple of weeks, but it would be the place where people would keep you up to speed with what was going on in the GTD world. So fostering that kind of community, that kind of internal community was very important to the success of the implementation of GTD. But it's also about management support. Getting the buy-in of the folks at the senior senior table, the executives, is also really important. I've been lucky enough to spend a fair chunk of today actually with David Allen. He and I are both here in London. He's come over for the week. And one of the clients that we went and talked to today, David was making a great point, which is, look, if you're looking to implement culture change and you see GTD as a way of doing this, one of the really good places to start is with the senior-most folks in the organization and get them coached in GTD. Spend the time so that they get exposed to it, they understand how it works, and then it will flow down from there. So these two things I think work in tandem. In other words, yes, you do need the grassroots support. You've got to foster the community, but at the same time, get the support of the senior team, get them on board, and that'll make your life a lot easier as you implement, and will make the implementation more effective. People just get it. This is a perception that a lot of us have. A lot of people read the book, and David says this himself, and they say, well, that's just common sense on steroids. There's nothing hugely different there. I've heard many of these things before. And so a lot of people believe that they just get it because they don't see anything which is groundbreakingly new in terms of the basic thinking. They think, well, this is just easy stuff and it's easy to get. At the end of the day, though, I think a lot of people fall into this trap. They think they get it, but they don't really. Listen to David Allen talk about it. Listen to the people who've been doing GTD for years and years and years. The subtlety, once you get into it and once you get your systems crafted and once you get to the point where you're doing this on a regular basis, the subtlety in this becomes tremendous. I mean, I'll just share a little bit of a personal detail. When I very first got started, I actually came to GTD through mind mapping. So those of you who've seen Mind Manager or one of those other tools that does mind mapping, that's how I first heard about GTD. And in implementing GTD then, I thought, well, gee, a real natural way to do that would be to put it all in a mind map. And I still have it somewhere. I mean, if you can imagine, every one of my projects, every one of the notes from all of my meetings, all of my tasks, everything categorized. And I knew I was coming up against the limitations of the system as I designed it when I'd open up that mind map, smoke started to come out of the PC. I knew that this was just not going to work. So over time, certainly my systems have gone all over the place in terms of the technology I've used, the way that I've thought about it. But there's a lot of subtlety there. And I think that that's something that's worth keeping in mind and trying to impress on people as you talk to them about GTD. Don't just stress the list making, the tactic, the day-to-day process. Talk to them about what you've gone through, what's your journey been, and what kind of profound implications has it had for you? Because that's where the real magic is in GTD. It's freeing up your mind so that you've got time to be creative, got time to spend an extra hour at home every day. Your stress levels are down. That's where the real magic is. The magic is not in the list making. It's about individuals, right? GTD, as a person in the learning and development profession, quite often people would hear about GTD and the first thing they'd say is, oh yeah, that's about time management for individuals, right? And they immediately put it in the same box as, ABC priority lists and the kinds of time management courses maybe some of you have been to. I've certainly been to a lot of them. That's one of the problems. Obviously, people think about it in a way which is not helpful. They put it in a bucket which is not helpful. They think about it in those terms, and yet when you peel the onion and what you find underneath is the fundamentals lead to this